Hey, time for some Type 40, extra Type 40 video exclusive content here on the Type 40 channel with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks. Welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. What is it this time? What's going on this time? Well, no, you to find out, or us to find out, because I've got somebody here, somebody calling in again for Type 40 extra. Who's calling? Who's calling? Well, I'm happy to say it's our friend of the show. I'd call him a continuity connoisseur.
Thank you.
Ian here from Black Glove Studio again. Hello, mate.
Hi, Dan.
Please like the video now, subscribe to the channel, and hit the cloister bell to get the notifications about what we're doing next and when we're doing it. Speaking about what we're doing, Chris, what have you been up to? Because it's been a couple of months, hasn't it, since we last spoke? You came in about your master project.
Yes.
But what's been going on for the last few weeks?
Well, definitely, I've had some nice breakthroughs with these bigger projects that I'm doing. Not bigger meaning more important, but just larger scale. We've been doing post-production on The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. We've been making headway with trying to do the deep fakes with there. I will just throw out a quick hope that if anyone hears this that knows about how to do deep fakes and also maybe digital sculpting of faces, we would be very appreciative. We are trying to match footage to facial expressions and such, and we need a little help with that. So there are ways, of course, around it. But if anyone knows how to do digital faces of sculpting, with the Unreal 5 engine, that's an avenue we are exploring. So if anyone is hearing this, knows this, and is interested to find out more about, if anyone wants to see David Tennant and Nicholas Courtney together on screen, this is the way you are going to be a key. So that's one thing that we are doing. And another larger scale, just in terms of time, is we are working on the subject of why we were talking, which is on a larger scale, is the original season 23, Colin Baker's Lost 1985 season, when the series was put on a hiatus. We are animating those 6 stories, and so we're doing production or broadcast order. So we're starting with The Nightmare Fair. And
okay, so let's give people a little bit of background as to why you're here, because I worked out that this tied in very nicely to an edition of Type 40 Live that we put out last week. So we got together on the live stream show and we talked about the Celestial Toy Maker, about his past, his present, and maybe his future a little bit on that live stream here at Type 40. And obviously this character, Chris, he's been around in the continuity of the show and the intellectual property for 56, 57 years, hasn't he? And yet there was only that one televised appearance back in 66, starring Michael Gough. The character has definitely stayed in the public consciousness, though, hasn't he? And he has been used in comic strips and books and things like that. So he's had this extended life, and yet there has been no return match, I should say, on screen.
Yes.
But there was an effort to, wasn't there, back in the mid-80s?
Yes.
So what happened then? What were they planning and why didn't it happen?
Well, in I think it was 84, when Colin Baker was the Doctor, and so we're talking probably in this hiatus or during the production probably of season 22. A fun little thing happened, which was that in the summer of 84, Colin Baker went to the opening at Blackpool Fun Fair of a new ride, which they called Space Mountain, or Space Invaders, I believe. And so Colin went there as a promotion because he was the Doctor, and that was probably some of the things he did probably in the off season of filming, just to do promotional events. Well, they were thinking of stories for the next season, which would have been season 23. And J&T kind of got the idea that it would be nice to use Blackpool Fun Fair as a location.
Oh, is that how it came about?
That's how it came about, that it was a real world event. They went and visited for a kind of a promotional event, and then J&T thought this would be a good location to film. And so in the process of creating ideas for what to do organically, they thought, well, a fun fair location would be a good place. Probably because he was still in the mode, J&T, post 20th anniversary, post 5 Doctors, as he was in season 21, of bringing back some old monsters. The thought came to tie the fun fair to some appropriate villain, and that's how they thought, let's bring back the Toy Maker from then almost 20 years earlier. The story by Brian Hales, The Celestial Toy Maker, with Michael Gough in the starring role as the Toy Maker. Because it was said even at the end of that story that his and the Doctor's battles would never end because the Toymaker could never die, which implies that the Doctor, even in that story, could never die.
Because it is heavily implied in that story, isn't it? Well, it's actually stated by the Toymaker that he'd met the Doctor before.
Yes.
They had an altercation before, a very brief one.
Mm-hmm.
And when we leave the story, although the Toymaker is seemingly, well, certainly his realm is destroyed, isn't it? And we're told the Doctor assures us that he's still out there somewhere. There's that promise of a rematch hanging in the air, isn't there?
Yes. And of course, they never got to it, but they intended to get to it in 1985. And the script was written, and I even, I have a copy of that script.
It was written by Graham Williams, wasn't it? Who'd been the producer of Doctor Who back in the mid to late 70s, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Producer of seasons 15, 16, 17, I think. Yes. And so he was no longer, the producer, but they brought him back to do the story. This one story. It was the last story that he ever wrote for Doctor Who. And sadly, he died in a shooting accident at his home in 1991. Only about 45 years old when he died. So, rest in peace.
Tragic.
Of course. Yeah, but he wrote this. He wrote this. There was a script written. It's dated from January. There's some handwritten notes from February on the script of 1985, showing some changes in dialogue and such. But the script exists, but of course in February 27th of that year of 85, Michael Gray call came down to put Doctor Who on. Probably cancel it. Eventually put it on a hiatus, and it was hiatus for 18 months. Those episodes that were written, Nightmare Fair and a few others, you had an Ice Warrior story, an Auton story, Tractators and such. They were in the balance for a little while. There was some thought of
they were in various states of completion, weren't they? All those scripts. But the Nightmare Fair was pretty much done and lost, wasn't it? The couple of drafts certainly into the process.
Yes, that was locked into it. I think the Ultimate Evil also was pretty much locked because I have that script too. And so the first two stories at least were pretty much locked. It was always going to be that and then Ultimate Evil. So, it's sadly once the victims really in terms of narrative are these stories. They were never produced because they decided ultimately when they returned to make the Trial of a Time Lord, which is very symbolic in many ways of where Doctor Who was at the time. But these stories were ultimately lost. I haven't seen that photo before. That's cool. Oh, thank you. But yeah, sadly, these stories were never produced. Three of them were revived as Target novels about 4 years later. The Nightmare Fair, The Ultimate Evil, and Mission to Magnus.
They were banded, weren't they, as the missing episodes?
The missing
something
episodes,
like that.
Yes, exactly.
Which now that phrase, the missing episodes, conjures up something entirely different.
Very, very different. So, but similar but very different. And so, they were very. That's where they stood for about 20 years. About 20 years. There's a few of them as novels, others as just rumors and such. Yes, you see there. That's the re-release cover of the Nightmare Fair. I actually on eBay.
They're fabled blue spine reprints, aren't they? And they're very much sought after. I didn't bother with that one. I've got the original one as well.
I have yes, exactly. I have the original. I got it on eBay a few years ago, and somehow. But yeah, it's a very nice read. It's a very good story. And obviously also have here, this year they released in June an audiobook reading of The Nightmare Fair, which confirmed to me, honestly, that we were going to get the Toymaker in these upcoming 60th specials. Because why would you, this story is very good, but why would you narrate this story unless you want to have maximum coverage of your character? You could have easily just done
you, as Black Glove Studio, though, you're returning to this now as part of your season 23, your missing season 23 sort of range of audio dramas, aren't you? So we had this as a novel, the Nightmare Fair. It's now out as an audio book. We've also got the audio drama too that Big Finish put out, a full cast audio drama, probably about 13 years ago now, quite a long time ago.
2009.
Baker, Nicola Bryant and David Bailey playing the Toymaker from Graham Williams' original scripts, but they were adapted by John Ainsworth for that.
Yes.
So Mike, and this is like a 2-disc release, like all of their range there. So my question, I suppose the most obvious question is, if we've got all these different productions, already we've got the book, we've got the audio drama, we've got the audio book, then what does your project attempt to bring to the story or bring out of the script that hasn't been addressed in these productions already?
Well, the visuals. Certainly, as animation, you'll be able to see this story finally brought to life. Not just hear it, but see it.
So you're producing full animation for all 4 episodes.
Yeah,
Are you also creating a new soundtrack, or was the idea that you play the animation alongside Big Finish's work?
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. So it's like somebody like the Australian animator Josh Snares is doing with
Josh Snares.
Josh Snares, yes, Out of Time, or the Genocide Machine. Does a full animation and then asks you to buy the audio and listen to it to sync it with the animation. That's what we will do. So everyone wins in a way, and
so Big Finish will still get sales for this because this is still in print, I understand.
Yes,
or it's certainly still available as a digital. Definitely, it's still there.
Yes, and that's the plan, so that people can hear Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant as they would have in 1985, as close as we can. That's our goal, is to approximate as close as we can to what we would have heard had it been on screen, would have seen and heard had it made on screen in 1985 and released in 86. Yeah. So that's the goal with all of these stories, not just the Nightmare Fair, but all the other ones that would have come out in this production. The Ultimate Evil, Yellow Fever, which is its own story, Mission to Magnus, The Hollows of Time, and a final story.
So that is all that made up that initial wave of lost stories that Big Finish put out. You're going to go back to all of them. We
are going to go. We're specifically going back to the 6 stories that would have been broadcast, because there are many other lost stories now that have been released with Colin Baker, with others. I would love to animate all of them. That would be lovely, but that's a mammoth task. It's a mammoth task as it is just with these 6.
Yeah, you've got to choose your battles, Chris. Choose your battles. Even Black Glove Studio has to choose its battle.
Yes. Oh, man. But I had to get the Brigadier there somehow, so he'll be in Yellow Fever.
Really? Oh, well, Yellow Fever was written by, conceived by, I don't know how much of it he actually wrote, by Robert Holmes, wasn't it?
Yes. Would have been probably the third story of this season, meant to be set in Singapore in the 1980s. And there are Autons in Singapore, and the Master and the Ronnie are there. And so is the Brigadier on holiday. And it's just a big battle. Yeah, that's it. It's just a big battle there.
This is very, very exciting.
Yes.
The whole thing is very exciting. But I think that when it comes to these stories, obviously, and although Big Finish did a brilliant job, in my view, with that range, obviously the stories were conceived for television, weren't they? They were conceived for that medium, for us to see them as well as hear them. So in this respect, I can see why you feel that it's still incomplete.
Yes. Yeah, so it's in my honest opinion, I feel that, if I may say this without sounding pompous, I feel that the classic series of Doctor Who is incomplete until Colin Baker's second series, the original season 23, has animation. And so you can see and hear it. You get the full audience experience of a television episode. I feel that these stories will complete the canon, the visual canon of that portion of Doctor Who.
This sounds very ambitious, because obviously animation takes talent.
Yes.
Conventionally, it takes money, doesn't it? You know, we do know that the BBC are having a terrible time trying to get money together to produce the official animations for the missing stories. And we constantly hear this, don't we, how expensive animation is to do. So which kind of animation are you looking to do? Is it kind of a hybrid of flash animation and full animation? Or is it akin to what the BBC have been doing on those animated missing episodes?
We are blessed to have people with enough talent and ability and experience to create animation that's full animation. We want to use animation with rigging to speed the process, certainly, but also to give it a more fluid look in movement. And I've even given you in some of the art, whenever you show it, a little sample, not of the animation, but this is one of the potential art styles that we want to use for our program, for our stories.
I have to be honest, I've worked in this field. I think this is fabulous. Speaking as somebody who's worked in animation, worked in storyboarding and character design, I think this, considering the limits and the ambitions of your production, I think this is absolutely bang on.
Thank you. It's for those who want to know, he looks just like you do see on screen, but this is Colin Baker's character. This is the Sixth Doctor for the Nightmare Fair. So he'll be just as he was in the Revelation of Daleks. You'll see his cat badge pin. It's the same one that he wore in Revelation, which is a departure from what he wore in other stories. It's Anastasia from the Aristocats. So it's this is an idea of what we were trying to do. It's a work in progress. We're trying to figure out his hair color. Just because if you see Colin's hair in 1985, it's definitely not the corn yellow of the trial of a Time Lord. It's got some brown and dirty blonde, so we're figuring it out. But it looks a little closer to Tom's hair in terms of hair color, but it's not exactly. But the point is, our goal here is for verisimilitude. We are very much not just trying to base this off of stills or photographs of Colin from a Nicola and such and others from season 22 or the trial. We're trying to think, okay, let's take what exists and then with our imagination, meaning the animators and such, create what these characters would look like in 1985. So again, we have artist renditions. These are the official portraits done by a wonderful artist named Dan W. And so the Sixth Doctor here, that's how he's going to look in the Nightmare Fair. This is Perry's costume we've designed, how she would have looked. Now, I'll give you some back history. Why does she have this type of costume? Well, I did research on the location of Blackpool. We know that they would have filmed. We know that they would have filmed starting on the 1st of April of 85, going to probably the 5th of April. And I checked the weather. What was the weather like? It was raining the whole time. Light rain, except on the 5th where it was more heavy rain. Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it was raining, whether it was a force 9 gale or not. J&T would still put Nicola Bryant in hot pants.
Exactly. Well, that's a little bit why.
and a lycra top that was like no thinner than a cigarette paper. What are you talking about? But no, I think this is a lovely outfit. And I'm certain that Nicola would have enjoyed wearing this a lot more.
Well, we figured it would have been cool weather, and so we put her into we quote unquote putting Perry into an outfit that's a little more appropriate for the weather. Which I
noticed that she's sporting the hat that she wore in Revelation of the Daleks. It's sort of beret that she's wearing on the cover too. Nightmare Fair from Big Finish.
Exactly. We took that inspiration and thought, well, look, it's just a few months later. It's essentially practically still winter weather, so let's give her some little connection. And besides, the Nightmare Fair is meant to be very close, if not immediately after Revelation of the Daleks. So we gave her that. We gave her that visual cue, but her hair is slightly long. Continuity is right, but in keeping with the fact that by the time you get to trial, Nicola's hair is considerably longer than it was in Revelation. We are putting her hair on a continuum. Every story will get a little bit longer until she gets pretty close to what she looks in the trial. But so here she's pretty much like Revelation, slightly longer hair. She has the same beret, and just these colors. We just found that jacket's something we found online. It's like what was a 1980s jacket for a woman? Oh, it looks like that. It just got nice colors that fit her in this style. And also,
this is very, very nicely done. So this is a character designer you've had go to work across your range of characters for the Nightmare Fair in this style. Mm-hmm. And I suppose that your animator will then work, or your animators will then work outward from that to line it up with perhaps some photography that we've seen for other stories to create a hybrid and to bring the stories to life. Is that the general process?
This is exactly the idea. That's exactly the process we want to do. We're using photographs. So one of my animators, wonderful man named Jonah, he lives in the UK. He went to Blackpool just during a couple months ago. So he took a lot of photographs of the surroundings and the fun fair, which hasn't changed terribly since the 1980s. We have from the script where some of the locations they would have visited. Graham Williams is very detailed about where he wanted to be. And so we'll have photographs. We have photographs that were taken in the 80s. We have 3D animators who know Blender wonderfully well. One has worked with me a little bit with the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, recreating the wedding room there. And so we will use Blender. It used to be a combination of 2D and 3D techniques, certainly to create some of the locations and blend those with maybe with photographs to recreate the fun fair and the promenade. The
experience of being in Blackpool in the mid-80s. I went to Blackpool in the mid-80s looking for the Doctor Who exhibition, but it closed down by the time I got there. But Blackpool, it has a flavour and character and atmosphere all of its own. So I think you've definitely done the right thing by sending one of your time agents, one of your field time agents out there to take some pictures.
And thank you. And of course, since we're talking about overall the toy maker will be there. I will say we don't have yet footage of the toy maker, animation of the toy maker pictures yet. But as a preview, I can certainly say that he will be played by Michael Goff. Meaning he'll be he'll be drawn as if he's played by Michael Goff.
Look like the toy maker as we saw him in '66, but he will speak with David Bailey's voice. Is that?
Yes, exactly. Because partly largely because when I listened to the Nightmare Fair and listened to Bailey's performance, I had just watched the Celestial Toymaker, the reconstruction in the existing episode. And as I listened to Bailey's performance, I realized, he seems to be very close to Goff's performance, but with an added intensity and a madness to him. So a couple
because obviously Big Finish, looking back to the audio from Big Finish's point of view, they don't create visuals, so they would have chosen their actor based on how he sounded, not how he looked, wouldn't they? So the idea being that we would imagine the Toymaker in our heads as we originally saw him, even though, having said that, it is David Bailey who's on the front cover artwork for this. It's still, obviously the script was written for Michael Goff because he was supposed to come back to the part on television, wasn't he?
He was, and he would have probably come back in the mid 80s and in 85. And although you see David Bailey on the cover, and we certainly honor his performance because we have the voice, and he does the character in this and a couple other stories. Yeah. But his performance is very evocative of Michael Goff. And if you really see his face, take away his beard, he looks a lot like Michael Goff. If you think about it, they both have long faces, square jaws, long, dark sweeping hair, dark piercing eyes. He's about the same age that Goff would have been. Bailey was 71, I think, when he recorded this. And Goff, he didn't know Michael Goff his exact age, but he would have been somewhere between 70 and 75 years old when he would have filmed this. So it's the right age, a man in his 70s, evoking an older Toymaker, an aged Toymaker in that way. And so I can say that our Toymaker on screen in the animation, he will be the age that Michael Goff would have been in 1985. We're not gonna make him look like he did in 66. He's going to be an older Toymaker, a greater Toymaker. He'll look
similar to how he looked when he played Councillor Heading a couple of years earlier in Arc Infinity.
Exactly. Specifically, I will say this, that we are basing how he looked. We'll use that as a partial basis, but the closest is we're going to base how Michael Goff looked when he did the film Out of Africa with Robert Redford and Meryl Streep. That was filmed in, I think, early 1985. So it's about the right time. So it's him as a 70 or so year old man, and but the intensity is there that David Bailey brings to the performance. There's a madness to him that we really enjoy.
So as always with your productions, you do strike a very fine balance in everything that you do, but you do it very, very well. I know it's very carefully and very respectfully in your previous productions, such as The Final Game, which I really enjoyed. Now you've got several others that are also in production. So It's okay to look at what already exists to one part or another like that, and characters like Perry and the Doctor and the Toymaker. But obviously there's a cast of other characters, aren't there, that fill all 4 episodes of the Nightmare Fair, and your artists have been at work on imagining them as well, haven't they? So we've got a little bit of a slideshow here coming up. So when it comes to these characters here, so we're looking at Inspector Truscott and Doomed Man on screen now. We've got several more to follow.
Yes.
So how did you approach this? Did you speak to the artist about making these characters look a little like the actors that play them in the audio, or were they given free rein?
They were given free. It's a couple of things. They were given free rein in terms of how to dress them and draw them, of course. But then there are always constraints. Art thrives through constraints. So there are certain constraints. For example, Inspector Truscott, Gerald Truscott is his name in the novel. The Target novel describes him as wearing a very smart 3-piece suit. So I said, let's stick with that. He has a 3-piece suit. It looks like he's a man in very much in authority. The Doomed Man, we know he's just wearing street clothes. So you have a lot more free rein with how he looks. It's more the facial expressions and such. In terms of how they look, this is where I was, again, a specific constraint, which is I took it upon myself to think, okay, let's make this as close as possible to how this would have been in 1985. We don't know beyond the principal actors, Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, Michael Goff, who would have played these roles. So I went the extra mile as best I could and say, okay, who were actors of, we kind of know the ages of these characters and such. Truscott's a man in his late 40s and such. Who were actors of about that age, roughly, and at that time were television actors and who were acting television at the time, and that were the right ages, that were around, that maybe had appeared.
Were likely to have turned up in a show like Doctor Who, because there was a lot of people They're kind of repertory players, really, who turn up in a lot of BBC shows over and over again. So that's also very sound judgment too.
Exactly. Thank you. And so, we have this, you can see, you can probably guess maybe if you know these guys, but for example, the Doom Man, we are, they're not exactly how they look, but, essentially based off of Pat Gorman. And then Inspector Truscott is based off of an actor named Tony Church, who there's a 1983 film called Krull. I've seen parts of it, just online. He played one of the kings or one of the guards, I think, of this kingdom. And thought, well, he was an actor that has authority. He was about that age, about 50 years old at the time. And I don't know if you're going to scroll through others, but I'm happy to share a little bit more about the others.
Yeah, give us the insight on the bad guys. These look like henchmen in various states of disrepair and distress.
They look scary, but in fact they are in fact prisoners of the Toymaker. They're not.
Are they really?
They are. On the left you have the mechanic, originally called in the script, by the way, the assassin. But the mechanic ultimately, it was actually scratched out by pen. It was typed as the assassin, scratched out by probably Graham Williams and rewritten as the mechanic. This is the mechanic. He's an alien, a Venusian, I think. Not a Venusian, but a Venusian. And he's just describes wearing black leather. I pictured him, he's described as being over 6 feet tall and thin and scary looking. So I pictured Mark Hardy, who played the cyber lieutenant in many of the 80s stories, but not Attack of the Cybermen. So I thought, let's get Mark Hardy into the Colin Baker stories, because he's 6'3" or 4", and he's lean and well proportioned and such, dark hair, and he's described as not having a mouth. So a very creepy character. A little bit of, my artist thought, let's throw in a little bit of an Edward Scissorhands vibe, because he doesn't have hands. On the right, you have SB, who's an android. SB is a short for a much longer name. I pictured him being played by the actor Hugh Fraser. You may know him from Poirot with David Suchet. He was acting in the mid-'80s. He's a cyborg. He's got half of a human face, and one of his hands is human, his ear. But the point is, he's wearing black leather. We thought, what would have looked like a mid-'80s cyborg of the time. So, and he has a voice box, so we created this, and chains and such. The chains are because he's a prisoner. He's chained to the wall and such. But just this disheveled, very kind of upper class style British soldier or something who's just had his face blown off. So those are a couple other characters there, and
so it's a whole process that you go through with all of these characters. You're kind of you're casting them, you're deciding what they're going to wear, you're deciding on makeup and hair and all those things. Everything except actually traveling back to 1985 and making it all happen in the BBC television centre. Yes. They really are striking designs and nicely thought through. You can see the care and attention to detail that's gone into these.
Thank you. Yeah, Dan did a wonderful job. He really, we had long discussions about, I gave him the cast list. I chose the cast and said, okay, these are the cast. And such. And Shardlow, that's Michael Sheard.
I did wonder.
Yeah, that's Michael Sheard. I decided to get him, Michael Sheard, the prolific Doctor Who guest actor, and Roswell in The Empire Strikes Back. I got him into a Colin Baker story, which he missed.
Because by this point, Sheard hadn't been in the show since 82, had he? He would then appear in 88 again. So it would have maintained his sort of approximately 3-year gap in between appearances in Doctor Who.
Exactly. So, and thank you. Yeah, we thought we should get him into Doctor Who again. So he's Michael Sheard, playing Shardlow, the 18th century nobleman or such that's now a servant of the Toymaker.
Great fun.
This is one of those. Well, I will make one point about the clown mask, the clown makeup, is that it's not ever mentioned in the script or the novel or the audio that the Toymaker's servants have clown makeup, but because we are dealing with a visual element, and I have to credit one of my friends, animators, Lonnie Webb. A guy from Texas, he had this idea, what do we do to distinguish? And he said, well, maybe they have some type of clown makeup. And this man, being the character, he's the arcade manager. We're calling back to the original Toymaker story in '66. You had the same actors playing several different characters. Well, this character, who we envision played by the late David Jackson of Blake 7, is showing up as several different characters with different guises. He's an arcade manager. He's the ride operator, the ride conductor. He's the boiler suit thug. So different aspects of the same, possibly the same.
In the
person.
same way that the two actors from that original story did play different characters in the first 3 parts. And the makeup's very similar as well, yeah.
It was intentional. We wanted to go back as much as we can, do callbacks to the original Celestial Toymaker story and say, well, who are these? Are they perhaps the same people? Or are they left over that you might not have seen on screen? But it's the same tactics, the same intentions.
Lovely ideas. This is what I find so interesting about talking to you. It's your thought processes. I don't think I know anyone who's more steeped in classic Doctor Who minutiae than you are.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't do the deep dives into the iceberg waters of Doctor Who.
Talk about deep dives. You've named this one character Kevin Stoney. Remind us who Kevin Stoney was.
Well, Kevin Stoney was the actor who played Mavic Chen and Tobias Vaughn and also what's his I think it's Tyrone in Revenge of the Sun. But you don't see his face in that one. And for whatever reason, they took the name Kevin Stoney and applied to this guest character in the Nightmare Fair. So we can blame Graham Williams. We've based him off of, again, not exactly the likeness, but we based him off of the actor John Shackley, who was
in the Tripods.
In the Tripods, which would have been broadcast shortly before, but then canceled, so he would have been available. He was one of the few actors from that show, from what my researchers, who continued to act for a few more years. He's since left acting, but he continued to act maybe through a little more of the 80s. So who's
Marty McFly over the other side?
that's Tyrone. He has a non-speaking role. There's you probably will scroll later. There's a Scottish mom, and her son, he's a little boy, or maybe a preteen, teenage, 13-year-old. He goes missing for a short time. Captured by the Toymaker, but then he's returned him. He has no speaking role, but he's there, and you see him. And I'm blanking on it. His last name is Bremner, but he's kind of based upon this. I can't tell you how hard it was to find actors who had to be acting at that time, based on my own rules, who were acting at the time. 1985 would have been about the right age, so maybe a child actor or just becoming a teenager, who would have been acting at that exact time. And there's this actor who's in the Train Spotting films. I've not seen the Train Spotting films. But in fact, bear with me just a moment. I'll easily find his name. He's a Scottish actor because, again...
What it might be, yeah.
Ewan Bremner.
Oh, I know who you mean. Of course I do. I can totally picture Ewan Bremner in this part and in that costume.
Yeah, well, his first credits are around 1985, so he's just barely fit. It's not easy because a lot of these actors that'd be the right age that I kept trying to find, they might have started acting in the late 80s or the early to mid 90s when they were, maybe in their 20s and such. Right age, but they weren't acting at the time. I thought they have to be someone who's, I'm not going to do my stunt casting sense of, well, I like this guy. He wasn't acting until the 2000s. Let's get him here. No. They had to be acting. They had to be acting then. Verisimilitude is the key. And so, yeah, just these are. That was a tricky one, but I found him, and again, they don't look exactly the same. This is the monster. This is a video arcade game monster from.
This creature does feature on the cover of the book, doesn't it? As illustrated by Alistair Pearson back in the late 80s. And you've gone. There are certain similarities here.
Yes.
There are in Pearson's work, but you've deviated to some degree based on the script, I would imagine.
Based on the script, he's meant to be on this cover of the book. He's quite large, and kind of the mix between a bear and a rhino and an elephant, stuff, especially the feet. So we thought, but in the script, he's described as being quite lean and 7 feet tall. So who knows if they would have found a 7-foot tall actor, but a very lean actor. What we were thinking is maybe we might have cast, if we could, maybe David Prowse or something. And put him in the costume, but he's leaner. But big. You can't see it in this effect, but we're going to add in the animation kind of based upon, again, a suggestion from wonderful Lonnie Webb, that he's going to have kind of a Tron effect. If you know what Tron is, I haven't seen the movie, but it's
the Disney movie.
Yes, kind of that with David Warner and I think Jeff Bridges. Kind of a pulsating, kind of a shimmering holographic effect. We're going to add that in the animation, but you see here.
Very nice. Kind
of just strip the costume, and then this is again another David Jackson, the actor, the the ride conductor. I should say I chose David Jackson because I originally thought it would be some small guy, but when I saw David Jackson, I thought, this man is a large, tall guy. He must be at least 6'3" or 4.
Yeah, he's big bloke. He was
big guy. So I thought he'd be perfect as a large. And you need large guys to seem imposing, and he could push Colin Baker around. And so I think, okay, he'd be very good as these things. But yes, with the by the way, the script indicates that the arcade monster, it's not in the novelization, it's not in the audio. His name is Elmon. The monster's name is Elmon, Elmon. That's an interesting little thing. It's in the script.
Elmon.
So Elmon. Not sure what it means. Elmon, maybe, but whatever. Maybe the monster.
Well, Instagram and X at Type40 Doctor Who. What does Elmon mean? Or let us know in the comments section.
Yes.
Help us out. If there's some sort of cryptic thing that's referring to, it may be referring to something in geology for all we know. If it's a rock creature,
possible, because you could see there's a crystal in its head. We kept that a little bit, but we kind of closed the head because on the cover it looks like it's broken open. We thought, let's make that a little easier managed in animation and as a cost if it were a physical costume. And so we want to make it look scary. So it'll be pulsating with green and kind of lots of reds and greens, maybe some purples and blues as well. Mostly red and green are mentioned in the story. But yeah, wonderful costumes here for these characters. The ride conductor, again, another David Jackson aspect, as I said. Just want to make it look Victorian, out of place in the kind of the very futuristic. The ride certainly would have been Space Invaders, but they call it in the novel Space Mountain, probably to avoid the fact that there's a Space Mountain in Disneyland in the audience. It's called Galactic Adventure, but it would have. I'm sure it would have been Space Invaders. And so you're
going to be taking to recap for people. You're going to be taking these concepts and moving them through the production to give them this kind of look.
Yes.
And you'll create the environments as well based on the photography that you've retrieved with one of your agents there up in Blackpool. You've got the audio track already, and then you'll weave it all together into 4 25-minute episodes.
No. Well, a couple things. First, when it comes to this animation style, this might not end up being the animation style. This is a test. That works with the rigging, but we have a couple of strong possibilities for the animation style. So this is a sample of what could be. But we have at least one other style that it may go in a different direction. But
still in flux.
Still in flux. But we will be using animation rigging. In terms of the episodes, we're going full verisimilitude, and it's going to be just like in the season 22, and just like in the Nightmare Fair audio, 2 roughly 45-minute episodes. So we're going to keep them as two.
Oh,
two
okay.
parts. Yeah. They would have still been the episodes would still have been that long. Yeah, two 45-minute episodes. They're not. We have the constraint of the audio is that these episodes, except for the Nightmare Fair Part 1, it runs short. It's a little less than 40, but most of these episodes run probably closer to 50, 55 minutes. But in any case, it's going to be two-part stories. Yellow Fever will be 3 parts, but even like the 2 Doctors, but even so.
Oh, I totally forgot about that, because obviously if it hadn't have been cancelled and been put into hiatus, I should say, then it would have been business as usual. There was no indication that up until the moment that the grade stepped in like that they were going to move it back to the 25-minute formula. So yeah, I can see why you've done that. Yeah,
and it's a wonderful it's a fun experience. We haven't shown you the toy maker because the costume is being redesigned, but I can exclusively say that the toy maker's costume will be redesigned. It won't be.
It won't be the Mandarin.
It won't be it won't be the Mandarin. Where it's similar because he's still called. There are still references in the audio to making him look like a Chinese Mandarin, but we wanted to. I spoke to Mike Tucker.
Yes.
People I'm sure you know who he is, involved Doctor at the time as a designer. And
he was a special effects designer, wasn't he? A model maker.
Exactly. And I spoke to him, and he was working in Doctor Who in 1986. Actually, I think he was involved with Doctor Who, I think even doing season 22. And so he was there. He's one of the few people that's sadly still alive, or at least that I could reach, that has firsthand knowledge of that era. And I said, I asked him several things like, what would Sil's costume have been like? Would it have been like Vengeance of Varos or Magwar? But I also asked him, what do you think they would have done for the toy maker's costume? Would they have used the original, or would they have done something different? And he said, well, it's highly unlikely if the original costume probably would have still existed by 1985. But his opinion was that they would have redesigned it to be in keeping, in visual keeping with the original costume, but it would have been a redesign. Our friend Terry Cooper echoed that sentiment in his opinion based on some of his experience working with people.
Because let's be fair, the JNT production had great success in reimagining creatively the Cybermen, the Daleks to some extent, looking at the colours there, and other characters very, very successfully. So why wouldn't they? Even the Silurians, and you could include those Samurai Sea Levels. I think they probably looked good enough on paper. So yeah, yes. they probably would have looked again at the toy maker. I agree.
Exactly. So as a preview for people, I will simply say, imagine Michael Gough, age 70 or so, and then a costume that is similar to what he's wearing, but there are some interesting visual things that it's there will be some playing card motifs woven into his costume.
Very nice.
I will leave it to people why, but I will say that there is a bird on his hat.
Bird?
There's a bird on his hat. He'll have a sparrow on his hat.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's very intriguing, and typically Chris McKeon as well, to knit it together with something else.
And he's got something on his chest too. That's a little symbol that I'll let people see if they can catch it. That makes them think, "Why is this there?" It's cool stuff. Yeah.
This is, as always, whenever we get you talking about a project, this is very tantalizing, Chris.
Thank you.
The thing is, people will be wondering, this is all well and good, but when are we going to be able to watch this? What are the barriers? What are the obstacles that you now face between getting this from those concept pictures and the animation tests that you're going through to getting it actually on screens and where people can see it? So do you need people to maybe get in touch if they've got the required skill set and want to work on a project like this? What are you looking for?
We're absolutely looking for more people that are 2D animators, and 3D animators, but we have a special need to want to call out to 2D animators, and people if they have experience with rigging, or if they are opening to learning animation rigging, and I will say this: if this ends up being our final style, it may not be, but if it is, someone that is open to adapting their own art styles to something that can look like this, or whatever other styles that we have. Because we need people to be able to have a streamlined look, to be able to adapt and be teachable, so to speak, and adapt to whatever the final look will be. But mostly we have a big need for 2D animators and 3D animators as well. Hopefully people that have Blender experience to help us create these the backgrounds, the sets, so to speak. The sets will be Blender created 3D, so they'll look very nice. And anyone with animation skills, cell shading, that animation rigging might be slightly different, but colorists and such, anyone that has animation abilities and that knows Doctor Who or wants to learn and is willing to work with us, we are all volunteers, but we have good volunteers, and we are creating, as you can see, as a small group of volunteers, we are creating something. We are getting there. And you'll see this, you'll see the back, you'll see the star field with the words of the Nightmare Fair, and you'll be able to watch Nightmare Fair. If we with as much help as we can, we will be able to get this done. So if
do have a track record on delivering these things, don't you? The final game was a really accomplished production, very ambitious, and had an epic feel to it as well. So I know that you aim really quite high, don't you? What have you got a timescale for this, or will it happen when it happens?
Oh well, it will happen when it happens, but we have a goal. And I think we feel it's a reasonable goal. Our hope is to go into, we are deep into pre-production at this point for the Nightmare Fair. And our hope is to enter production, the full animation, early next year. When that is, whenever. But we hope to start animating in 24. And our goal is to animate through that year and into the next. And the hopeful goal is to release the Nightmare Fair on the 4th and 11th of January 2026, which is the 40th anniversary of when the television episodes would have aired in 1986.
That's a lovely touch.
Thank you. So it's our hope. We feel that we will be able to do this because we still have 2.5 years or so, 2.25. The point is we know that we can do it. Our people are talented enough and passionate enough and motivated enough to do it, and they're wonderful people. But we welcome anyone else, as we've done over the last 3 months. anyone and everyone with skills and interest in helping us bring Colin Baker's story to these missing stories to life, to full life. My ultimate hope is to present with Colin Baker one day personally, or at least he can receive it. Some type of physical version of these stories. Unofficial things. We are not making any money. I want to make this clear. We are making no money. We are doing this as volunteers. We do this for the love of Doctor Who. And we want to, this is our gift to Colin Baker, our hopeful gift to Colin Baker, to complete his television era. And we want to do this while while he is here with us. And we want to do this
years after it was so cruelly interfered with, for want of a better phrase.
Well, he said himself, he said his favorite toy was taken away, and Big Finish is giving him back as much as they can his toy. We want to give him back his favorite toy, just a little bit more for these stories. For these stories, they were meant to be on television. They would have been on television. There was nothing stopping them except the cancellation. So it is within our power. We can't go back in time, but it is within our power to take what exists and overlay it with our loving contribution of animation to bring the Sixth Doctor and Perry and all these other wonderful characters, many of whose actors have passed away. So it's our tribute to them. And it's our tribute to the actors who are still with us, Colin and Nicola, to show our appreciation, to tell them that we love them, and that they are among our favorites, and that they are here with us, and that we agree with him, and we are giving him back his toy as much as is within our power. So this is going to be a wonderful experience. It'll be a highlight if we can do this, all of them. That is our goal, and I can say this: it is very much our goal. We are not just focusing on the Nightmare Fair. We've already begun pre-production, very early pre-production of the Ultimate Evil. I had a conversation with Dan W. just last week about the costume ideas and the character cast list for the Ultimate Evil, the second story. So we're going to keep going. As soon as we start getting into one story, we'll get into production of one story. We'll start doing pre-production of another, and the animation rigging will speed things. So we are very much in earnest of getting everything done. I can't wait to do the designs for Yellow Fever. For anyone that's wondering about that, that will be the one exception that we've. There is no Big Finish audio for that, but I wrote the scripts to this story, 3-part story, and we did a full cast recording of it 3 years ago. It's taken a long time because of COVID and such, but it is finally in production of sound design for the audio. I believe that for fans, I think that we will probably release the Yellow Fever as an audio first so they can hear it. But rest assured, if we are able, with the best of help possible, if we're able to get all these 6 stories done, it will be animated as well.
Well, this has been an impassioned pitch, Chris, and I certainly feel inspired that I want to watch this, and maybe we can inspire some people out there to get in touch with you. Where's the best way that they can reach out to Black Glove Studio and get involved with this project, or even just keep tabs on it?
Absolutely. The best place is, of course, I'm most active on Twitter, or now I guess you call X. So at Black Glove Studio, at Studio Glove, capital S, capital G, at Studio Glove. We are also on Instagram. Just look for Black Glove Studio on Instagram. We also have a Facebook page, again, called Black Glove Studio. So just search on social media for Black Glove Studio, but we are most active, I am most active on X, and again, the handle is at Studio Glove.
There you go. Get yourself involved if you can, or just help spread the word about what Chris and the rest of Black Glove Studio have up their sleeves. Some cards, maybe. Certainly a toy maker, a doctor, and a companion, and that rock monster, and everything else. I think it's a really lovely idea, the more I think about it, particularly the timing of it too. That wound, that cut very, very deep. I don't know what he's looking so smug about. Yeah, long memories, Mick. Yeah. I'm excited to see this, Chris, and as always, I wish you every success in the future. Get in touch with Black Glove Studio on Twitter /X. And yeah, if you know anybody who you think may want to get involved, send them this video and pass their names along to Chris too. If they're down for it, you can reach out to us. Of course, you can in the comments section too. Let us know what you think of this wonderful concept art that you've seen so far, and Chris's general pitch there for what they plan on doing with the Nightmare Fair. Is this the kind of thing you're interested in? Do you think you can help in any way have just got any questions for Chris about his love of Doctor Who, his knowledge of the lore, which I don't think anybody's goes deeper or with greater, with finer detail. You can reach out and talk to me through Instagram and X. I'm there as the Spacebook, wheezing and groaning, ranting and raving about all things geeky inside and outside of the TARDIS, but mostly about Doctor Who, particularly in this 60th anniversary year as it all heats up for us here on Type 40. Thanks again for your company there, Chris. Be sure to come back and tell us about some more projects. I can't keep track of the various things that you've got. Come again. What is next? What's next to be released from you guys? Is there anything on the starting grid?
Yes, we are currently remastering and for a re-release, The Misshapen Planet. You showed a graphic for that.
Oh, there
story.
we are. Yeah.
It's our first Doctor, and so it's the first Doctor Butterworth Monk, Peter Butterworth Monk story, their third encounter with Dodo and Stephen. Remastered also, thankfully, to align with the to be able to accommodate coexist with the Big Finish audio, the Outlaws, where Dodo again meets the monk. And let's see, we are beginning production. People recording for a third Doctor Delgado Master Cybermen story called The Shards of Mondas. So that's entering early production. People are starting to record or will be recording soon. Let's see, anything else? Well, definitely, I mentioned this earlier, The Wedding of Sarah J. Smith. Again, an impassioned plea for people to help with our post-production, specifically doing facial digital sculpting of faces. Probably with the Unreal Engine. So that's upcoming. We hope to have that done in soon. That will be our tribute to Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier, and that's his. If you want to see the Brigadier's final adventure, television adventure, alongside the 10th Doctor as it was envisioned in 2009, please reach out and help us. We welcome everyone and all the help that we can have to bring this story to life. Really, these stories. If you want to see us restore Doctor Who, little bits of Doctor Who that would have been. So we can strike off that list of the saddest words of men and pen it might have been. If we can, as the poet said, if we can strike off these stories from the list, The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, season 23, help us, and we will help fandom as much as we can to close these wounds. We are trying to close a few wounds. We closed the wound of we closed the wound of the loss of Roger Delgado in the final game. We are trying to close the wound of the loss of Nicholas Courtney in The Wedding of Sarah J. Smith. We're trying to close the wound of the loss of Colin Baker's second series of Doctor Who. But it is worth it to do, and is lovely and so rewarding to do. So please help us to bring a little bit of just a little more joy to Doctor Who.
You convinced me. I think you've probably convinced them too. This has been Type 40 Extra, your before show, after show, and in between show to everything else that we do here at Type 40. We've got the podcasts and the live streams here on the YouTube channel and over on Rumble there too with Type 40 Live. So yeah, this was our interview with Jeff Cummings, the fantastic artist, the book cover artist, the album artist. Basically, Jeff has done it all. He talked to Simon and I at length about his fantastic career here on Type 40. And that's our discussion there about the moments of Doctor Who, not the stories, not the characters, the doctors or the regen. We're talking about the moments, those little moments that have informed our fandom. And there was another Type 40 Extra where Ian David Dears, our resident mega geek, went on the prowl at MCN London Comic Con a few months ago. Lots of fun, and yeah, more coming soon too. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, check you're still subscribed, and hit the cloister bell so you get all the notifications about which of that is coming next. You don't miss anything. Great to catch up with you again, Chris. As I said, drop us some comments, leave some comments for Chris, and ideally some contact details. That would be even better. Yes, that's it for this one. Chris, thanks for coming on again. Get in touch again. We'll bring you on again. But as always, we wish you the best for all of the projects that you've got coming down the pipe to people. And yeah, let's make it happen, everybody. Let's make it happen.